I never hear him say that the reason we have gangs, we have kids stabbing each other in the streets is because they've abandoned Christianity and the family has collapsed. This man is politically inept. When he comes here and talks about Christian politics, it's embarrassing.
So they already tried to have a Christian society without God in the 1700s and the 1800s, where they wanted to keep the morals without the beliefs. And it evolved into the mess that we have today. What authority can you appeal to say that the family should be honoured? I've given you mine. It's in the 10 Commandments. What's yours?
The authority is the reality that we live in. Bob thinks he's got to convince everyone that God is real and then he can start preaching about the family. The fact of the matter is, Christopher Hitchens has completely ruined Christianity for an entire generation.
Mate, 1 second. The brother has won the argument from me because he just said, listen carefully, he just said that the reason why the argument for the family is never made because it's not a vote winner. Which means you have to bring people to that place where they will be open to that argument. So, let's define the question that we're going to talk about, and then we'll debate it. I apologise. Does anyone have any water, please?
I've got some here, but I'll...
Thank you. So, what's the question should we debate? Whether a Christian politics is realistic?
No, whether you are serious about it. I don't think you are. The UKIP model that I apparently put upon you is the one you proposed. Is the one you proposed last week.
The question has to be something that everyone can relate to, not a personal.
Which is why I had to add some colour to my question.
So let's talk about whether a Christian politic, as I've described, is realistic. That's essentially the same thing. You'll have the debate you want to have, but it's got to be a question that everyone can relate to. Okay, so we'll do. Has anyone got a timepiece so we can time it?
I'll leave it out, Bob. You talk, I talk. We get through this.
All
Don't
right.
worry about it.
Let me ask. Firstly, let's establish where are you coming from on these questions, because it is important to know where the person I'm talking to comes from in terms of
by the
their
end of this, you'll
understanding.
have an idea. Won't
What is your political agenda? What is your political
I am part of
narrative?
no political party, no political movement. I've never voted with the exception of the referendum where I voted to leave. And that is the sum total of my political allegiance.
Where would you say, broadly speaking, you are politically?
I've no idea. Can we get, does anyone want to hear about my politics? Nobody knows me, or do we want to hear about Bob?
I want to hear about your
Come on guys, debate. What's going on?
So the question that we're being asked is what I'm saying realistic? I would be the first to admit that what I'm saying is a challenge, because we as Christians are badly led by bishops, we're badly led by our priests and our pastors, and we have fallen into a narrative that says that Christianity and politics do not mix. And when we do mix our politics and our Christianity and our politics, what we often end up doing is borrowing from the political narratives of others. So we borrow from the Conservatives or UKIP or Labour. And I am saying away with all these things. That as Christians, our politics needs to be rooted in our own identity as Christians.
I thought you hated identity politics, Bob. In fact, I've seen you down here arguing with Antifa, who are identitarians, and all of a sudden, no, you're wrong about your identity, we need a Christian identity.
That is the whole.
That last week.
So he asked the question, I thought you're against identity politics. I hear you arguing with anti-fascista. He's misrepresenting what happened on that occasion. I was arguing with anti-fascista because of their use of violence to suppress free speech. As a Christian, the whole point of evangelizing and seeking converts is because we believe that there is a true identity that we invite people to embrace for themselves. that identity affects the whole of your life. It affects the way you think. It affects what values you have, what priorities you have. It affects how you respond to things, how you react to things. You had your chance. It affects how you vote. It affects where you spend your money. It affects what you buy. It affects where you buy it. As Christians, all of these decisions are political. But we have at the moment in the church an incoherent political narrative because we're not basing it squarely upon our Christian identity, but basing it on a borrowing of other political narratives. So it's a challenge, not unrealistic.
One of your agendas that you identified, not me, is the family.
Yes.
Why is it that you have not talked about the family and linked it, as politicians will often do, to get people interested in their agenda that they're talking about? Why have you not linked it to gang violence, which we know is directly connected to the collapse of the family? Why is this not a great time for you to be talking about the collapse of the family and how Christianity is there to solve it? I do not hear this come out of your mouth talking about theology, never about politics.
Shall I answer that question? Yeah. So, let's be clear. This brother doesn't know everything that I've ever said, but he's speaking as if he does. I have.
There is
actually,
hours and hours
on
YouTube, Bob.
Actually, did I interrupt you?
And I am a regular.
Did I interrupt you?
Right.
So, I have spoke at length about the importance of the family. At length. And I'm quite happy to do it now. I'm quite happy to do it now. Stop interrupting. I am quite happy to do it now. The value of the family, which I talked about just last week.
Bob, you're evangelizing.
The family is the primary structure of our society. And liberal narratives are undermining the family by redefining it, by not supporting it in their tax policies, by permitting its erosion through liberal laws on divorce, rather than strengthening the institution of the family, by making divorce harder, by making people think and reflect about what marriage is before they can legally marry, by supporting families through taxes, by supporting families through a whole host of laws. The reason why the family is important is because the family is the first line of your mental health, your welfare system. It is the first line of your benefit system. It's the first line of healthcare. It's the first line of policing. It's the first line of civil service. When we break down the family, we cast all of these problems onto the state, and then lo and behold, the state cannot find the money to meet the demand because it cannot replace the millions of families that are needed to cohesively hold society together. However, the brother is saying, why do I not link these two things together? Let's be clear. Unless you are basing your value system on something transcendent, of something not temporal, of something above the idea of human will, intelligence and opinion, then you have no basis upon which to say the family is the primary unit of society and the family is this definition. Let me ask you, since you brought up the family and you've asked me questions, I can ask you a question. On what basis do you argue that the family is the primary building structure of our society?
For the reality that we live in. Not once has he mentioned gang, I just like that pointed out.
The reality.
Reality.
What reality?
We know the reality.
We construct reality in a democracy. Yeah.
The reality that gang violence is inextricably linked to the collapse of the family.
Amen.
Thank you.
Not poverty then.
The two things are linked. There's more than one cause.
Poverty is directly connected.
Poverty is linked to the breakdown of the family. Sorry, I beat you to the punch.
No, sir.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Party politics.
The reason, ladies and gentlemen.
Bob.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Where was I?
discussing
Gangs in the family, how gangs affect the family.
My basis for saying that the family is important is because the reality that we live in. 76% of men in prison grew up without fathers. 25% of them grew up in care.
Amen.
We know the collapse of the family is inextricably linked to gangs and gang violence and
Amen.
criminality and poverty.
Amen.
We know this. So now that in the media, regardless of whether you think it's true or not, current events, they're talking about gangs and stabbings in this country. What a great opportunity for the evangelizing Christian to go on about family values, but I never hear him speak about it. I never hear him say that the reason we have gangs, we have kids stabbing each other in the streets is because they've abandoned Christianity and the family has collapsed. This man is politically inept. When he comes here and talks about Christian politics, it's embarrassing.
So, brother, let's just deal with that point. He said, and I agree with him, that the family is at the root cause of things like gang violence and poverty. Undeniably so. I know from personal experience what it meant when my own family disintegrated as a child, and as a child I had to go out and ask the neighbours and the friends of my mother to help pay for our electricity meter. Why? Because my mother, God bless her soul, she was a good mother, but she couldn't be both mother and worker at the same time. Now, let's be clear. Let's be clear. Society would not have to be relearning these lessons if it had not abandoned the teaching of this book. This book teaches the importance of the family, so much so that God Himself institutes that one of the commandments is that you should honor your mother and your father, which gives you both the definition of family, but it also gives you the principle that the family is something to be honored. Society, following liberal atheistic narratives, and I suspect my interlocutor is an atheist, following those principles has decided that there is no authority greater than our own opinion. And collectively, this atheist society has given up on the family, and that is why it is seeing the fruit of its atheism. So I did not hear any good reason, any authority, apart from the fruits of this abandonment of Christianity as the basis to value the family. What authority can you appeal to say that the family should be honoured? I've given you mine. It's in the 10 Commandments. What's yours?
The authority is the reality that we live in. Bob thinks he's got to convince everyone that God is real and then he can start preaching about the family. The fact of the matter is, Christopher Hitchens has completely ruined Christianity for an entire generation. Probably the next one because he's existing forever on YouTube. Jordan Peterson, who you may have heard of, never talks about the belief in God, will convert more men, women and children to Christianity than Bob ever will. Partly because more people listen.
That's not Bob's fault.
So,
Bob hasn't got the same.
No, my point is, Bob works from the basis that you must believe in this book. He's not going to get everyone to believe that make everyone believe
in
that.
Bob, not the book.
Brother, so the brother attacks me and he says, "Oh, but you're not converting anyone." The fact is,
I'm saying you're going about it wrong, Bob.
We have plenty of testimonies of people who have become Christians because of our work here at Soco Films. I was speaking to one just this last week, an atheist who became a Christian. There are many people who are becoming Christians.
The importance of putting a plug into your speech.
He talked about how Christopher Hitchens had ruined Christianity for a generation. This is Christopher Hitchens, who would not debate William Lane Craig because he knew that his collection of characterizations, platitudes and stereotypes do not constitute a solid argument. And that's all that we're seeing here. The atheist is using characterization, stereotype and platitude to marshal an argument not fact. You see, ladies and gentlemen, if you say there is no God, then you are saying there is no absolute reality, no truth outside of our perception, outside of our opinion. And if a society believes that, then it feels empowered to recreate society however it chooses. However, if you believe in God as the basis of your society, then your society will reflect the values of the God that you believe in. Muslims create caliphates that represent a God of power. Christians create societies that reflect a God of love, and atheists create a society that reflects a God of mammon in consumerism, in which the only purpose of the individual is to consume products and to define their existence by a series of temporal experiences.
Nobody ever swipes right.
Sorry, I'm slightly confused. What is it you disagree on? You know, both saying that family is important in society. What is it? What's the disagreement?
I actually care about the family, and he's here to evangelize. You noticed how quickly the political discussion where we can have a thoughtful conversation was abandoned, and then he started to evangelize. Now that it might be because the man is political inept, it might be because someone has asked him to come here and just preach Christianity and leave the politics to someone else. I don't know.
So, the brother is talking.
Why is it you refuse to use political tools for your own agenda?
So, I as a Christian, and everyone here has heard me, have spoke clearly about a Christian political agenda. I've described it clearly. The brother is so politically inept in his understanding of politics that he only understands politics as being about democratic parties in a democratic system.
So you want politics
is a broader series of relationships than simply about political parties. Christians need to follow a Christian political narrative.
So you don't want to operate in the realm of
you want to talk about why we need God. I'm going to guess that you're white working class just like I am. So we can both speak realistically about white working class communities. Would you deny? I read the Bible every day, brother. So, brother, would you agree with me that amongst white working class communities there is a problem with alcohol abuse, a problem with substance abuse, and the breakdown of the family?
Firstly,
yes or no? Do you agree or disagree? Answer the question.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
The fact that I am white working class gives me no authority whatsoever on any issue. Judge me by the words that I say and the reason I give you for saying them, not on the colour of skin or the class that I belong to.
So, the brother says he has no authority to speak on anything.
I said,
earlier in the conversation, he was saying that he is a political authority to judge how politically inept or not inept the agenda that I've described is. Now, let us be clear.
Which one of us is calling
white working class will know there is a problem of substance abuse amongst the white working class. There is a problem of alcohol abuse. There is a problem of family breakdown. And it is all related to the fact that the white working classes were first influenced by Marxists to abandon their faith, and then when Marxism collapsed, they were left with nothing, no identity of their own at all. And now they find themselves in communities that are not communities. We, as white working class, must discover our own history, which is interlinked with the history of the church. A Christian identity older than any nation state, older than any political ideology, older than any other kind of identity that we can speak of. There was no ethnic identity to speak of. As Christians, our white Anglo-Saxon ancestors were interwoven with an international movement called the Church that united Anglo-Saxons with Franks, with Catalonians, with Germans, with Armenians, with Lebanons, with Ethiopians, with Egyptians in the cause of Christ. Look at us now. Look at your own communities now. How broken they are. How infested they are with corruption. It is because we have taken on the atheism of this man. And this kind of atheism has left us with no guiding star except what the Parliament tells us to do.
Question. You told us about atheism, right? Can we not have a functioning society based on the kind of Judeo-Christian value structure, right? And still be atheist? I mean, I don't believe in a God necessarily, but I still believe in the kind of
Could this man
Judeo-Christian
convince
philosophy.
you of Christian principles?
Pardon?
Could this man convince
No,
you
like,
of Christian principles?
I agree with the Christian principles and basically like the Ten Commandments is like a basic value structure for all people, right? But I don't believe in God as such. Aren't they mutually? Are you basically making the case that for a good society we must have Christianity?
Okay, so the question is,
Are they mutually inclusive?
can we not have a Christian society without God? Well, the brother, it's not his fault, because all of us in England have been separated from our history. We're not really taught our history in Europe, because it does not serve the internationalist elites. But the fact of the matter is, they already tried to have a Christian society without God in the 1700s and the 1800s, where they wanted to keep the morals without the beliefs. And it evolved into the mess that we have today. And the reason for that is, again, the point I'm making. If you take away the anchor of a belief in a transcendent, supernatural God, then you have no authority to underpin the moral system described in the book. And then it simply becomes a competition between those who have the biggest guns and the most influence. And in that struggle, the militias of the Enlightenment transformed our society into this liberal, decaying mass that is dying in Western Europe. You're holding on to a failed experiment. Liberalism is dying, the liberal West is dying, and it is dying because of your atheism.
The Enlightenment turned us into what we are today. I mean, we may have died as a result of a second plague. Indeed, that was the reason why the first scientific Enlightenment came about, was because a quarter of the European population died of the plague. And so it was a way of people actually trying to make their life better, actually trying to make the world better. So I'm making the point that I'd say it's an integral element of, I think, Christianity and Judaism, the principle of searching for the scientific truth. And I'd say it's an essential part of both religions. My point is just a criticism on what you're saying about the Enlightenment being a bad thing, because you improve your technological prowess, your ability, and that means you have the option to live your life well. You have more autonomy.
So the brother is saying that the Enlightenment is a good thing because of the advancements of science. This is a myth of our age, that the highest form of knowledge is knowledge of the scientific kind. I contest that the highest form of knowledge is how best to love. Because if you don't know how to love those around you, You might know everything about how the atom works, but your family falls to pieces, your society falls to pieces, and your community falls to pieces. Scientific development of the Enlightenment had its antecedents within Christendom. Look at Francis Bacon. Look at the Christians who developed science, the early natural philosophers. The Christian faith has never been anti-science. It has always been pro-science. Michelangelo da Vinci tried to imagine a flying machine back in the 12th, 13th century. The first Christian monk that tried to attempt flight did so in the 11th century. Christians are not anti-science. The problem with the Enlightenment is that it separated us from that thing that gave our society gravitas and became intoxicated in the 1700s with scientific and technological development for its own sake. And when we went into that exchange, we lost the ability to navigate the moral questions that breed a healthy society or that allow us to breed at all. It's not a coincidence that those societies that are most advanced in technology, Japan, Germany, Britain, France, Italy, the Western world, are dying. They are dying because they are not having children. And they are dying because they are not having children because they have given up on the family and become intoxicated by a modern genocide of children we call abortion.
Sorry, I've got a question just to veer back into the main point of the debate. I mean, you've got your opinions on family and how the family should be handled in your religion, politically, however you want to call it. What is your solution for the erosion of the family like nowadays? I mean, just to, because you never said anything about it. You mentioned gangs, but I didn't hear anything about it.
The solution is difficult to come by. When Christians argue that no-fault divorce has caused, an outbreak of break up a family, they have a point. But when they try to tell me, oh no, first you have to believe this book and then believe what I say, it's nonsense. But we need to have a national conversation that Bob wants to play no part in about how we are going to fix the family. No fault divorce is one of them. The benefit system is another. I know very little about economics, but I know if you subsidise something, you get more of it. If you tax it, you get less of it. If we are subsidising single-parent families, we get more of them. So that is options I will look. We've got to have a national conversation about what we're going to do with this, because we cannot continue in the country with the family collapses.
Two minutes, bro.
It's all well and good to criticise as well the way he's handling it, but I mean, if it works, even if it is in his mind, and then you don't actually
he wants to bring about a Christian state. I'm suggesting we can fix the family quicker than that. We haven't got to convince everyone that God exists and then start teaching them what God says. We can, among us, perhaps fix the family.
Which family? Which family?
Families in this country.
I think the family of single parents, the family of heterosexual couples, the family of homosexual couples, the family. Which family? Which family?
I think we have to admit.
Which family?
No one was confused.
I'm
except
confused.
Bob,
I'm asking you which family.
No one was confused except
Which
Bob,
family?
apparently. The traditional 2.4 children.
Right, and how do you convince a liberal society that that's the correct definition of the family?
You show them what happens when you use another model. We know if we was to create a model of the family, we all know what it would look like. It's a tried and tested method been used throughout history. It's a man, it's a woman, it's with their children, and hopefully a wider community to support them. In places like Ghana, the phrase is, it takes a village to raise a family.
Before he's talking about
where do we get that definition?
I do not need a book written by men to convince
one man
you
and
this
four
is
women?
true.
Why not one man and four women?
You.
Why not one man and four women?
Because history has shown us the model that works, Bob, I can convince people of the best model of a family without throwing that in their face.
Unfortunately, you can't, because liberal conservatives like you already tried that and they failed. They failed.
Be clear, you don't know me.
Liberal conservatives like you tried this and they failed. That is why we have redefined the family to be every collection, including a man and his dog. The fact of the matter is that because of atheism, which you adhere to, you have no basis to defend the family. Because
socialist.
You cannot define the family. I'm a Christian, not a socialist.
You're a socialist.
I'm not a
if you want
socialist.
the family, you need
I'm a
house
Christian.
prices to be
I'm not a
affordable
Christian.
for small
I'm a
families.
Christian,
The reason
bro. I'm not a
Socialism has
socialist.
destroyed the family wherever it's been.
Bullshit. If
Leave
you
it out.
You're just
No,
talking about
I
subsidising
agree with
versus
him.
taxation.
Socialism is destructive to the family.
wherever it has
Socialism
You
is
subsidise
destructive
something,
to the
you subsidise
family.
something
The
more,
problem
you
with
Because
tax it.
socialism
So if you
is
subsidise
a
housing-
offshoot of a Marxist ideology that wishes to undermine every structure of society that would prevent a proletariat revolution,
Like Christianity.
including the family. So socialism is destructive to the family. Advocates of the alternative families are socialists. They are the enemies of the family.
Can I just say the problem with
Liberal
atheism?
conservatism has failed because atheism
you don't make a rational
fails
argument.
in
Because
society.
liberal conservatives, or conservatives I should say, Christian conservatives, do not make the arguments.
So you think I should join you in an alliance?
Hang on. They think we've got to convince everyone God exists and that His word is supreme, and then they tell you that word, whatever it is they say. I'm saying to you, we can reason, we can say our economic model has flaws in it. If we subsidise single-parent family, you get more of it. If you subsidise something, you get more of it. If you tax it, you get less.
I
The
agree.
reason
I
I can
agree, yeah.
reason with you here today without a holy book, without claiming I am from divine intervention, that the reason the family is collapsing is partly because of economics, partly because of this cultural Marxism that he goes on about.
What about economics?
So let me answer this brother's point. The brother is saying that we can reason to the Christian family. Let us be clear. That experiment has already happened in the West, and the West came reasonably to the wrong conclusions.
that argument, Bob?
Why?
Who makes that
Why?
argument?
Because reason does not sit in isolation.
Who do you hear making that
Reason
argument?
is simply a systematic way of thinking based upon a series of presuppositions filtered through a value matrix. That is how reason works. However, your presuppositions and value matrix are in themselves categories that are not reasonable, they are assertions. So on what basis do you justify those assertions? As Christians, we justify those assertions based upon divine authority given to the prophets and the apostles. On what reasonable grounds does an atheist justify his basic assertions and presuppositions? You can't reason in a vacuum.
Can I
You
just say,
reason
the problem with
from something,
atheism is
not
that it
to
never
something.
considered
respond, let him
what
respond.
actually, it never considered moral guidance. It never stated, well, you know, this is how you should live your life if you want to do well in your life. All it said was, oh, we've got the scientific method now, we can make good computers, we have all of these new gadgets, now everything's going to be perfect. You know, it never actually contemplated the actual Christian mindset and all of the structures that Christianity and Judaism put in place that kept the family together, that kept the community together, and that actually resulted in people becoming moral, people becoming good. And so all of that was thrown out with atheism because it never considered any of that. All it said was you can buy this new computer and it's really jazzy and it goes really fast, and that's pretty much been the entire extent of our moral guidance.
Absolutely.
And
Let's make one thing clear. The argument for the family never gets made publicly, except fringe Christian groups mention the family. You will not hear.
Thank you.
Hang on.
Thank you.
You will not hear a politician talk about the family because it is not a vote winner. You will not hear the media talk about the family because it is not a ratings winner. Let's not buy into this. No, the argument's been made and it has failed. Nobody makes the argument that the collapse of the family is causing problems in our society. No one dare make it. You make the argument that you point out the fact that 76% of men in prison grew up without fathers.
Amen.
And they say, why? How dare you say that women are raising children back? I do not know what kind of lunatic you have to be to hear the statistic that 75% of men in prison grew up without fathers and think the women are the problem.
My kind of lunatic. You have to be my kind of lunatic. The brother has made. 1 second. The brother has won the argument from me because he just said, listen carefully, he just said that the reason why the argument for the family is never made because it's not a vote winner, which means you have to bring people to that place where they will be open to that argument. And making Christians will make people open to that argument. So before we can win the argument for the family and the argument against abortion, we first have to beat the roadblockers like him, the conservative liberals who think that they can have Christian morality without the Christian God, because they've already lost the argument. And the only way that you're going to win people to that argument is by making people Christian. So we have to win them to Christ first.
What he's saying is, even if you don't agree with him, what he's trying to say is his book and his God will make people anchored in the fact that family means something. And even if you don't agree with him, you've got to come with like an opposite point of view. You haven't really said anything. You mentioned gangs. And you don't
success of the new atheists in this country has ruined Christianity for a generation.
We are still here, brother. We're still here.
Fringe crews, right?
Not fringe.
Yes, you are.
Not fringe. We're fringe. Dude, the thing about the modern atheist is they are just... Let me tell you why the modern atheist movement doesn't matter. Brothers and sisters, modern atheism doesn't matter. Why? Because atheists don't have kids. And eventually, modern atheists will simply be bred out of history. They are nothing but a footnote in a future history book. People like the modern atheists are irrelevant. I'm working on it, bro. Yes, I'm happy to get married, by the way. I'm single, but I'm happy to get married.
You want to be out there.
So,
I
gotta do what God calls me to do.
Lizzie's about it. She thinks.
I gotta do what God calls me to do. I gotta do what God calls me to do. Let me. I want to drill into this point you made about reason.
I thought you wanted to smear me as an atheist.
No, you are an atheist loon. But I want to drill into the point you made about reason, because you said that we can reason to the family. Now, the point is, I don't know whether you've actually taken the time to understand philosophically what reason is. But reason is not a set of values, it is not a set of beliefs. It is simply a systemized way of thinking. It's a mythologized way of thinking. That is what reason is. Now, the point that I'm making to you is that reason works from a series of presuppositions. Your presupposition, and it's one that I laud, it's one that I applaud, and despite all the mockery, bro, I actually think you're a man of goodwill. Yeah, I think you're a good guy.
I don't need you to tell me that, Bob. But
I think you're a man of goodwill. But the point that I'm making to you is that the idea of the family as being the traditional family, man, woman, and their bloodlines, yeah, that friend is something that you've inherited from the Christian faith. It is not right. So my point to you is that you have taken an irrational presupposition. Because it is irrational. There is no other reason to believe in the family as the bloodlines that we're describing, except because it's here in the book.
It's demonstrably true in the reality that
There
we
are
live
plenty
in.
of cultures where they have different models of family. Islamic cultures, one with 4, or one with 2, or one with 3. Polygamous cultures, such as those in Africa, where a man might have multiple wives.
How do we know this? Did you reason this assumption?
No, this is sociological studies, my friend. And also here in the West, any combination of any group that claims that they love one another. So it is not rationally justified to say that the family is between a man and a woman and their children. If you,
it is rational to say this is what we've done throughout history for hundreds of years, and
In
it has
our
worked
continent.
quite well. My point to you.
Why has it worked?
My point to you. Well, we just seen it work. We just seen it work.
who taught
We
it?
just we've demonstrated
Who
it.
taught
We've
it?
done it. We've
Who
we've
taught
done
it?
it. We've observed
Who created
that, it
that
works
model of
well.
family?
It doesn't matter, Bob. It
does matter.
I don't know. I don't care who invented the car. We can still use it because we
It
know
is-
it works.
It is the church that
My
posited
point,
this definition
my
of
point
the
to you
family.
is, I could have more success convincing people in this park, in this country, that the family is a good idea, better than you can convert everyone to Christianity and then start telling them what it says in
People
that
can
book.
make their own minds up on that. I'm not in some ratings campaign with you. My point to you is,
No,
bro,
but I'm assuming you would
My
like
point is,
Christian
bro,
values to be spread in this country,
My point to you is-
regardless of whether they actually believe in
my
that book.
point to you, bro, is this: that you are trying to argue for the Christian definition of the family when you have no rational basis to do so. There is no rational basis to define the family as a man and a woman and their children. It is simply an assertion of the Judeo-Christian model. And that assertion is dependent upon what Christians read in the prophetic and apostolic teaching. If you try to argue for the Christian definition of the family without any rational basis, people will just say that is your opinion and nothing more. And then
Well,
they
we
will
demonstrate
say
with
we will
arguments,
have
Bob.
different opinions.
Demonstrate with arguments. You point to statistics like 75%
I
of men
agree with
in
you.
prison grew up without
Atheism
fathers.
doesn't work, and atheist societies don't work. They die. That's why the West is dying.
More to manipulating people with religion, there are other ways. Economics,
It is
for
not
example,
manipulation.
if you subsidise something, you get more of it. If you tax it, you get less.
I totally agree with you.
that
I'm
will
not
be a better
disputing that.
manipulation.
I am
than
not
this
disputing
book.
that. I am not disputing that.
So
The-
why?
your
So why
point
can't?
is,
Why can't you make
your whole
efforts?
argument is based upon getting wrapped up in the symptoms rather than dealing with the causes. You're the kind of guy that keeps getting rid of the cobweb and thinking, why does the cobweb keep coming back? Until you get rid of the spider, you will not get rid of the cobwebs. The problems in our society about the family and its breakdown, the increase in poverty, the increase in mental health problems, the fact that you've got so many people going to prisons because they don't have role models in fathers, all of those things are linked to the fact that in an atheistic society you have no reason to presume that a family of a mother and a father is greater than any other collection of people. But that's the argument you're trying to make, and you have no basis for making it reasonably.
China and Japan. What? China and Japan, whose values aren't found in the Judeo-Christian.
Japan is dying.
Japan is dying.
Japan is dying, yes.
Japan is dying.
Yes, they're in a demographic crisis much like Western Europe.
They've got an aging population. What do you mean Japan is dying? And China,
They're not having children.
Yeah, no, I know.
They're not having children.
But like, how can you create that?
If your society is not having kids, you're part of a dying society.
Okay, what about China then? Okay, but what about China then?
They're overbreeding.
Yeah, no, but that's the other way around. But these
They're-
are. No,
I'm not saying that only Christian values are life-giving.
But they have father. You know, they have parents, married parents, mother, father, and children. That's a family in both these countries.
Absolutely. I am not pretending that only the Christian faith argues for the idea of the family that I'm talking about. The Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments. No, you're not listening. You weren't here throughout all of this conversation. The Ten Commandments, which say, honor your mother and father, which gives you both the principle of honoring the family and also the definition of the family, is something that we Christians say is part of natural law. It's not part of Mosaic law. It's part of natural law, meaning that any society can reason to it intuitively. However, with regards to China, let's look at China. This is China, whose communist government tried to eradicate the family with the one-person family.
It's not eradicating, that's limiting. Do you not understand the difference?
If your society is...
Sir, if you're allowed to have children, you're not eradicating, you're limiting.
If your society is only allowed... I mean, they've stopped the practice now because they realise they can't police it. But if your society is saying that you can only have one child, your population, if it's successfully policed, your population continues to halve, and then halve again, and then halve again. At some point you have to abandon that principle.
No, sir.
All ideas of social control of the family are destructive.
What's a perfect Christian state with like perfect families that's functioning and alive, as you might say?
The perfect Christian
One
state
he's
is
trying to
one
bring
that
about the
acknowledges.
revolution.
Yeah, brother, you weren't here at the beginning, so there's things that I've said that you have not heard. There are things that I have said that you have not heard.
Answer the questions if I have.
Right, so in terms of the perfect society, I said very clearly, much earlier in the conversation, that Christians do not presume that a perfect society is achievable. That the point of politics is not to create a utopia, because utopia is illusionary. The point of a Christian political narrative is to mitigate the effects of sin, to constantly strive to approximate a series of maxims and ideals in the full knowledge that you will never achieve them. Communists believe in utopia, Islamists believe in utopia, Nazis believe in utopia, Christians don't believe in utopia. We don't have utopian visions, because the Christian narrative is inherently against utopian
if it's not
vision.
a utopian vision?
Which is in the next world not something we achieve.
So
in
that's
this
not a
world.
utopian ideal that you cannot
Not that
reach.
we seek to establish in this world, because the kingdom of heaven is
Are you
not
on
of this
ketamine or are
world.
you not taking enough ketamine?
Anyway, bro, I think it's been interesting
don't bro
talking to you.
him. I was at
I
Carnival.
do
he
genuinely
wasn't.
see you as a man of goodwill. Anyone who's going to argue for the family like you do. Anyone I'm guessing you're against abortion. Can I have less about abortion? Well, on some values, then you got it right. On others, we need to talk again. But seriously, bro, your experiment, your idea has been tried and failed in our society.
Well, no,
Repeating
I
failure will
demonstrate
not
to you,
help.
No one makes these arguments.
When people were arguing for the liberalisation of divorce, the liberalisation of abortion, the redefinition of family,
And now
people
that we have,
were
now-
making
now
your
that-
arguments
now that-
and they lost.
Now we have seen the effects of those decisions.
And they're terrible.
Wouldn't it be a better position to make those arguments now when we see the damage that
I
is being
think
done?
they're going to be reborn, yes, but I think if you want an audience that is receptive to those arguments, you need more Christians. Would you agree that if you had more Christians, you'd have more people receptive to those arguments? Would you agree?
Isn't Christianity the biggest religion on earth?
No, I think you're reasonable.
You don't
people.
believe so?
I think you're reasonable.
Christianity is the biggest religion on earth.
Who argues against the family and comes
Loads
out?
of people. Feminists, members of Stonewall,
Would that be where they turn
liberal
up on YouTube
socialists,
videos, feminists get
Marxists.
owned? No one believes these people.
There's plenty of them, my friend. There's plenty of them. The moment they whip someone up into a frenzy, oh, he dared to question the ideal of single mothers.
And who does everyone agree with when that happens?
Speaking that coming from someone who knows a single parent family directly from experience, which isn't to say that I'm trying to villainize single parents. I'm just saying that as a model, it's not great for society when applied by the tens of millions. What I'm saying to you is the moment you say that on the media, the liberal socialists whip people up into a frenzy, and we know how malleable the masses are.
When that happens, you get an awful lot of attention, because conflict creates attention, and
I agree.
attention creates what, Bob? Influence.
And which is why you need a muscular faith that is not frightened to stand
you
up
have
for
not
itself.
got no muscular faith. I hate when you come down here talking
Why?
about muscular
Why?
faith, because, like I say, I don't hear about you talking about gangs and why it's a collapse
I've
of
just
the family
done so
that's
today. You heard it directly.
And I know it's
Did
cheap.
I speak
know
about
it's-
gangs
I
today?
know it's cheap, but you're muscular.
Did
Hang on,
I
hang on, hang
speak
on.
about Christianity?
Hang on.
Did I speak about gangs today? Yes or no?
Not at any point.
Yes or no?
Not at any point.
Yes
did
or
you-
no?
Not at any point did you
Yes,
link
I
it.
know.
Do you not want to hear about that?
I want to
Not
hear
at-
you answer my
not
question
at-
first.
not
Did I
at-
speak about gangs today?
No, not at any
I
point.
didn't.
Not at any
All right.
point
Well,
did
the
you link it to
record
the family.
can correct.
This muscular faith that you possess to have, as you scared of Salafists.
Not scared. It's not about fear. It's not about fear, bro. It's about the fact that if people try to fight against Islamization on the basis of some national identity or ethnic identity, it will not work. But Christians have defeated jihad not once, not twice, but 3 times already. If you want to defeat Islamization, learn from the people who've done it already. And we did it by a muscular faith, that muscular faith of old, not the dressing gown, liberal wimpy version that the BBC puts on TV.
Let me tell you how you don't help defeat Islam.
I like the BBC.
Like I said, conflict creates interest. Interest creates influence. You come down here every week and have a shrieking match with a Muslim that everyone on YouTube is watching because, oh, Bob goes crazy on Muslim, or Mansur goes crazy on Bob. Whole load of attention. And who do you think people from Northern Africa and Asia, who are they listening to, Bob? Are you influencing them? I don't think so. You're listening the other side.
No, but it keeps him off the streets and out of shoplifting.
You help them.
If Bob wasn't here, he'd be shoplifting in Primark.
They are your partners in this thing.
So let's be clear.
He's banned from most of the shops on Oxford Street.
His argument is his proposal is to fight a religious identity with no identity at all.
We're not listening.
You cannot defeat a religious identity or transcendental truth claims without having an equally strong identity and without having transcendental truth claims yourself. And that is something that the liberals will never catch on to.
I'm a liberal.
Your society, bro, is already lost.
Society,
you
bro.
just haven't woken up to it.
My
concern is what the church does after the collapse of your society.
Not at any point did you address the attention that you give to the Dawa team to influence their constituency.
The Dawa team need to be challenged. You don't challenge them.
You help them.
You need to expose the inconsistencies of Islam. They are there to be exposed. Islam doesn't work. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked, and it is irrational.
How many Muslims have you converted to Christianity?
None, but he's converted 30 Christians to Islam.
I know of at least one. Myself, I know of another who became a Christian.
Oh, you're making it up as you go along, Bob.
They became a Christian and contacted me. The
Bob,
videos that they watched of ours influenced them, but the process of that conversion was started before watching our videos.
Every time,
so it does work, bro. But now let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. How many people have adopted your line of logic?
If I come down here preaching my logic.
Exactly. You are not even here to win. You're here just to be a commentator, a spectator, a stand to one side and mock everyone kind of guy. And that position is not going to win. Because you've got to stick your flag on something. You've got to say at some point, you've got to man up and you've got to say, on this hill I die. On this hill I fight. On this hill I take my stand. You don't stand for anything, and people that don't stand for anything fall for everything.
Oh, that's a really great line. Somebody quickly write it down.
Yeah.
If you don't stand for anything,
just for your
yeah, you have the last word.
No.
You have the last
back up your claim that I don't stand for anything. Just back that one up.
Okay, so in terms of your videos that I've seen, and in terms of yes,
all your fanboys are giving me shit about.
By the way, I like his video about me. It was hilarious.
Check out on online, boy.
Yeah.
All Bob's fanboys, they can give me shit in the comments section.
Yeah. Give him love. This brother can come to the faith, but he needs to realise that fighting as an individual nationalist conservative is not going to win. And if you're part of his camp, you aren't going to win because your ideology has exactly. So you're not going to win, are you? You're a one-man commentator, and you're here watching Islamization, Marxism.
All these fools lying
you rail against them, and you have nothing to proffer that is better.
Is that not
I do. It's called the Christian faith. It's called the Lord Jesus Christ.
Me coming and commenting on what I see in Speaker's Corner, is that not a hell of a lot better than all these fools who want revelation?
No, I wish you both stay indoors every Sunday.
The black separatists who want a revolution.
I came out happy and perfectly cool about the world. You two miserable.
I don't want a revolution. I want a political narrative.
No, what you need is the love of a good
towards
wife,
the church triumphant. That's what I want.
Nobody's ever going
I want Christians to organise themselves into a parallel society and to do away with our sharing in this multicultural melting pot that is a disaster.
The Notting
It is
Hill
a
Carnival is
disaster.
a multicultural melting point.
The Notting Hill Carnival
This isn't.
is exactly what it says that it is, a carnival fest. Meaning
Carnival
from
with an
carne,
L, you
of the
half-witted
flesh.
mediocrity. It's carnival, not carnivore.
And it comes from the Latin about the flesh.
Oh no, he's going to lecture me on Latin.
You don't know
so
Latin.
we're really in rich territory when I get a lecture in Latin.
Yes, because the problem with so many
A dead man
atheists
speaking about a dead
like
language.
yourself is you take terms that you don't understand,
Like
you
what?
take ideas and you
Yeah.
don't know their origins,
Yeah.
and then you make commentary upon society based upon a rich understanding of history that's
Oh.
70 years deep.
You've been able to sum up my 50
Society
years
is
really well in 2
older
minutes.
than your liberal philosophy.
And what's
your
wrong with
liberal
liberal philosophy? What's wrong with
is
liberal
dying.
And what Christianity
It is dying.
isn't. Have you been to
No,
any churches recently?
actually, go and look at Pew Research because
Churches
we have.
emptied after the
Go
First World
and look
War,
at
never
Pew
to fill again.
Research.
Why don't you? Why
A
don't you know your
series of
history?
academics who study all religious topics.
Aren't you gonna
We
get
are
only
not
3
a
people
dying
there,
faith.
including your mother?
The Christian faith is still growing.
Growing where?
We
In your
are
head.
not dying. In regions we are. In places like the Middle
What
East,
places?
where we are violently
The
being
Middle East? When
persecuted,
was the last time you were
whilst
strong in the Middle
liberal, virtue-signalling hypocrites are completely
When
silent
was the last time
about their plight.
Christianity was strong in the
In
Middle East?
Eastern Europe,
Roughly.
Christians are
About
undergoing
1500
a
years ago.
revival. In Africa, Christianity
Bob,
is
Do you want a
exploding.
discussion or just
In
look into
Iran,
the camera? Put some
Christianity
Vaseline on the lens,
is
or you're going to scare
exploding.
the children.
In Indonesia, Christianity is exploding.
Yes,
In China,
and you're helping to
Christianity
explode
is exploding. Only in Western Europe
What did your
and in
careers
parts
officer
of the
say at
Middle
school?
East
How did
is
you
the
end up
church
there?
dying. But the church has died in these places
You need to
before,
listen to some
and
Barry
it will
White
come
records.
back. The church will still be here.
But you
when
won't
the
be.
liberal nation state is a footnote in
Jesus
history,
loves you, but God is
and
embarrassed about
liberalism
you.
is a forgotten idea in a history book deemed a failure.
When was the last time you read any history?
Anyway, bro, you look after yourself.
Well, where are you going?
I'm going to offer you my hand.
No, I can't stay here alone. My mum's picking me up at 4 o'clock. You're a half-witted mediocrity. But don't take it personally.
After a very long conversation, what we have established, I think, is that those who are trying to argue from reason to a Christian moral system ultimately fail because they confuse what reason and rationality is. Reason is only a methodology of thought. It isn't a set of values and it isn't a set of beliefs. And there is no rational basis apart from a authority under which you can define the family as being X or value it as being above other social networks and combinations. The liberal experiment has failed because they are trying to establish a society independent of what every culture has testified to, that the family is a unit of male and female and their children, and of what the Judeo-Christian faith refined as being a single man with a single woman. If you try to establish a moral system without a moral basis, it simply becomes about opinion, and then the popular opinion wins. And what we've seen in our Western society is that the populist opinion is the liberal one. A liberal opinion that is leading to the destruction of the West. If you want to create a strong society, you have to give it a basis higher than human opinion, higher than the Parliament's laws. And that, my friends, has to be something transcendental. It has to be something outside of our simple discourse. And we as Christians have that in the teachings of the prophets and the apostles. And we need to build an alternative society within the West to offer to the West and militantly evangelize to those outside of our community that there is a better way to live. And that means that all Christians must galvanize themselves to this effort of a church triumphant in society, and that means it has to be triumphant politically as well.